Greetings comic lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, reviews of comics new and old, to history, to anecdotes, to really wherever our whims take us. Today, more comics you've been sleeping on, or well, may have been. I don't know what you're reading or not reading. I'm not in your home, unless you're watching me there, in which case I love what you've done with the place. Today we're going to be hopping out of superhero lane. We're going to look at another comic book genre, sci-fi. It's also going to blend with some other genres too, but mostly sci-fi. Hard sci-fi. We're going to be taking a look at Black Science. Black Science was published through Image Comics and is one of those comics that starts off as one thing with a seemingly fairly straightforward premise and slowly evolves into being something far more complex. Its name Black Science is already a play on the term black magic, so it gives you hints that there's going to be a lot of different themes and some of them may be blended. And you're going to get into some philosophy, but it doesn't stick its head up its own butt too much in that regard. And it's always explored through the characters and their different perspectives. And the characters have some pretty different points of view. Different points of view that actually matter and impact their decisions in ways that make sense. The base premise of this series is that protagonist Grant McKay has built an interdimensional portal capable of piercing through the walls of reality, which they have discovered is just like an onion. Infinite layers built upon each other. All choices branching out your usual infinite universe theory. Except for the idea that since this is an onion, there must be a core, a center, a prime universe, a prime Earth. There's just one little problem. His machine has been sabotaged. It's jumped before him and his team were fully ready. Now they're trapped, hopping from dimension to dimension, looking for a way home. I know it sounds very cliche, like bruh, I watched Quantum Leap, I watched Sliders. Well, it soon becomes very apparent that all is not as it seems. And not everyone there is there for the reasons that they said they were either. The story is by Rick Remender with art by Matteo Scalera and gorgeous colors by Dean White. The art in this series, in my opinion, is just stellar. It would have been enough to keep me there even if I hadn't been as engaged with the story as I was. But as it went, these two elements fed into each other so well. Scalera has done a decent amount of sci-fi work, and some people just have an eye for space and aliens, making things feel that perfect blend of unusual yet familiar. This was very much a series that I enjoyed more and more as it went on. I was a bit surprised by where it went conclusion-wise, because yes, this series is complete. It ran from 2013 to 2019, so you can pick it up and know that it's done. I know for some people it's a huge selling point, like, oh, it's over, I don't need to collect forever like Berserk. But the conclusion was not an unwelcome surprise. Though some I can see flipping tables, especially if you read it concurrently as it was going on, because that's always a very different experience than picking it up after it's done. There seems to be less of a consensus though as to we all need to like this or not like it when it comes to this comic. It's not Nemesis. Also, you never need to listen to those. You do what you like what you like. If you're enjoying something other people aren't, well, don't let them take your enjoyment. And if you don't like something that other people like, well, that's fine too. Wallow in the salt. Wallow with me. There's only one way to know if you're going to enjoy Black Science, and that is of course to check it out for yourself. But as always, when I do these vids, I will give you a taste, a little sampling. One issue to see if it catches your fancy. But before we get started, I'm Sasha, and if you're enjoying this content, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Join us on this comic book journey. We're going through all the genres, all the different types of comics. We've got way too many hand gestures. Actually, I've got too many hand gestures, and it's not gonna change. Let's do this. The cover is very classic 50s sci-fi style art. The type of art it wouldn't be odd to see from Wally Wood. You remember our Power Girl artist. He did a lot of sci-fi work. This is before that genre kind of collapsed because of comic book censorship, because of the panic in the post-war comic book era that just really decimated horror comics and sci-fi comics. It put EC Comics out of business. So always a little bit of bitterness that that genre collapsed for him. This cover has the classic style helmets and suits you'd see in such adventures from back in the day. But it's also updated with a fluid, looser style. The alien frogs look really cool, and the more you look, the more you notice. The frog obelisk in the back, the claws below. For me, I was like, well, I have to read this. It just screams sci-fi adventure. Although if that's not your genre at all, you may have the complete opposite reaction, and I'm just gonna put that back. It wasn't until I met everyone else's measure of success that I realized I'd failed myself. Look at that beautiful sky! The narration box comes from our main character, Grant McKay. And yes, he often talks like that, but don't run away. It has a purpose, I swear. But yes, depending upon your tolerance for waxing philosophical, this could come across as deep and introspective, or as a diary entry from someone just entering college, or from a poorly written memoir that nobody asked for. More importantly, I failed you, Sarah. Every choice made, each a single quantum event, where I didn't obsess over forbidden science. It's at this point we see what Grant and his companion are fleeing from, and it's fish people riding giant eels. It just looks so epic, and it tells you right away what type of sci-fi you're in for. We're gonna get some aliens. No Stargate seating here, so they all just look like humans, even though you gotta do that sometimes with budget, especially on TV. The two find themselves trapped on the edge of a cliff, and as it pans out, you get to see even more of the environment. Temples on the backs of turtles, floating against this purple sky. The first time I read this, I stopped and looked at this panel for a while. It demanded to be appreciated. They're right behind us. We have to jump. We'd never survive the fall. We have to try and get past them, Jen. Grant knows that his machine, the pillar, doesn't have the proper coolant inside of it. And this gives us the first hint that this trip was not entirely planned. Like, it isn't just a planned venture that went awry. They're not supposed to be here at all. If we don't get back before the jump, the pillar, it will what? Explode. They'll die, Jen. Jesus Christ, why didn't you tell anyone? As they argue, they've lingered too long, and she is killed by one of their pursuers. Yeah, black science, not for kids. No one is safe. People get hurt. Blood, also boobs. There are not as many boobs as you may expect for something paying such heavy homage to older sci-fi, but boobs in this issue. You've been warned. Grant doesn't even have time to register what happened. He needs to get away and get back to his kids and stop the pillar from exploding. So he pulls some jungle action moves to get behind his pursuers and keeps moving. Dead because of me. Because I never listen. Because no matter how much you begged me not to, I delved into black science. This panel with that narration box is just really effective. It highlights that fusion of science with this fantastic, magical feeling setting. It's beautiful and horrifying. He manages to get away by diving down, all the while rationalizing that everybody knew the risks. This entire time we're just working through his thought process about everything, learning about him and the environment, and what has occurred exposition-wise through his pontifications and pity party. There are also silent moments that just let us take in how different this world is, such as he surfaces from the water and gazes at this frog statue. Look at it. We learned through his panic lamentations that he was a workaholic, a mediocre father, a poor husband, an anti-authoritarian, and a cheater. He was cheating with one of the other scientists on his team who is also on this planet. Awkward. Also, he called his team the Anarchist League of Scientists and expected everything to go well. I mean, that was his first mistake right there. Anarchist League. Together. Huh. There is no authority but yourself. After a lifetime of powerlessness and insecurity, opposition to authority forced me to have faith in myself. He comes across a den of the electric frogs who electrocute him, forcing him to engage with them. He brutally rips the head off of one of them and uses it to turn around and electrocute some of them back. It's intense. Pops the head off. He ascends up the temple and we start to learn a little bit about this world's structure. But all of that is in the background. Those are things that we're left to infer largely for ourselves. He gives some details, but he's mostly focused on himself, which as you learn more and more about what type of character he is, makes a lot of sense. The frogs are the rulers and the fish people oppressed and slaves. It was here I had to decide, will I show the fish dancing girl? Do I have to censor fish nipples? I actually asked my husband and he was like, do they look like they could conceivably be realistic or someone could decide to view them that way? And the answer was yes. So censor bar. Censorship rules on YouTube are fun. He saves this fish dancer, but we see that even though he's doing that, it's more about him than her. She's being tortured, degraded, forced to dance, while Jowls, the Frog King, eats her people. I won't stand for that kind of autocrat bullshit, not in any dimension. He manages to escape the temple with the fish dancer, and serendipity / plot necessity is on his side. The woman he saves is married, he assumes married, but is clearly with the leader of those people who were chasing him. Which means they don't attack him when his new frog pursuers are bearing down on him. Instead, they attack each other and that buys him time to get away. 60 seconds before my invention evaporates them all. Lungs won't take air, years of weed, stress, and inactivity. See, there's all these kind of little details building on each other amidst his seemingly really obvious talking. There are little personality traits that are seeds that are being sown. At this point, we meet the rest of the team, arguing around the pillar as they wait for him to get back. And we start to get a sense of the dynamics, like how none of them seem to overly like a character named Kadir, who also happens to be the only one of them not in the same space gear. Also, they end up being called Dimensionauts, which is pretty awesome. Grant makes it back and has to tell them that their teammate Jen didn't make it. We're not gonna leave her, right?
We're coming back for her, Nathan. That's what your father's trying to say.
No, Sean. No lies. Something killed her. Jen's dead. Somber, the team makes the jump. They don't explode, but the pillar doesn't send them home. In fact, it seems to have sent them somewhere far worse. Are we home? No, son. Far from it. And that is issue 1 of black science. I, for one, was hooked, even though I wasn't sure if I liked the lead too much. But I did like that he already felt like a person, whether I liked him or not. I liked that the story didn't feel the need to stop and explain everything to me, and would let certain things unfold. And I loved how alien the environment felt. How much you end up liking this, though, is definitely going to rely on some key factors, such as how much you can handle narrative character introspection like you heard in this issue, because all the characters do it. You'll follow different characters and it'll shift focus, and they do all have distinct personalities, but they will all go on like that. So if that grates on you, it never fully goes away. Also, how much you enjoy this type of sci-fi, which despite being grounded in a very familiar concept, is kind of wild and goes in deep on certain tropes when it comes to parallel realities. Alternate versions, text speak, time skips, the like. All the characters are flawed, but some will be treated better than others. In my opinion, it depends who you end up liking. The series has some interesting ideas on order versus chaos, faith versus science, reality, God, and the like. And you may not agree with all of them. For me, that's definitely not a turnoff though. You don't need to agree with everything a work says or everything a certain character feels within it to enjoy it. In fact, sometimes part of the enjoyment can come from being challenged with opinions that you don't necessarily agree with. It can make you think up counterpoints and engage with the narrative more deeply. Or it can be completely off-putting and make you want to throw the book across the room. Everybody has different narrative turnoffs, different strokes for different folks. And there are some themes that certain people don't want to deal with, and that's absolutely fine. That's why it's so great that there's so many different comics out there to choose from. Something for everyone. Infinite, like an onion. The conclusion, like I said, for me worked, and this is a series that I can reread and actually get more out of knowing what happened. But of course, again, that's me. That's subjective. The only way you'll know if that's you is if you read all the way through. If any of this sounds interesting to you and you want to check it out, well, you know what to do. Do it. If you have read Black Science, let me know what you thought down below in a not spoilery manner. Not everybody enjoys that. And if you haven't, did seeing this make you at all intrigued, interested? No? Let me know. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to discuss comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.